James 5:11 says, "Behold, we count them happy which endure. You have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy." This is the theme of the book of Job, that we must endure through the bad things that happen in life. And we learn that at the end, that God is pitiful, of tender mercy, will reward us for our endurance, and will make everything all right. And so as we continue our study of the book of Job, we got down through verse 12 last week. Job 1, verse 12. But just to go back and as a little bit of a review, we know that Job was a man described as being perfect, upright, one that feared God and eschewed evil. We're told about his family, that he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. There's also a wife that comes into play next chapter. He was very wealthy, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she-asses, and a very great household. Verse 3 describes him as the greatest of all the men of the East. And so here is a great man in every sense of the word. And he was great in his faith toward God, and also great in his role in society and his wealth and all those things. He also was a great family man, wanting to rear his children to serve and trust God like he did. He would make sacrifices for them as they got together for their birthday celebrations. And he did this continually, wanting to make sure that his children were right with God as well. What we studied last before getting to Job was the book of Esther. And we talked about how in this book, God stays behind the scenes, that his name is not mentioned. But it seems interesting that the people, especially Esther and Mordecai, understand that God is working through the situation that they're in, and God is going to deliver them. And so we're not told about God in the book, but they are very aware that God is working through those things. And now we turn to the book of Job, and we are taken behind the scenes, and we are given knowledge that Job didn't have. Job doesn't know why he is going to suffer. He's not going to know the reason behind it, and his friends don't know. His wife doesn't know. But God tells us, sort of takes us behind the scenes and let us see what is actually happening with Job, why he is suffering, and that is so that we might know as well. And so we're given this little account of Satan coming before the Lord and the conversation that happens between them, that the Lord points out Job to Satan. So have you considered how great a servant of mine Job is? And as we're studying through this, we understand that this is a battle between God and Satan for the heart of Job. And Satan had conquered many hearts in the world, but he hadn't got a foothold in Job's heart. And Satan makes the charge that it's because God has paid him off. God has bribed him. He says, does Job fear God for naught, for nothing? Well, you put this hedge about him. You protected him with his wealth and everything going well for Job. And so, of course, he's going to serve you. But if you were to take all these things from him, he'll curse you to his face. And that's where we left last week, that God is allowing Satan to do just that. Take away all that he has. And we'll see Job's reaction. So we get to this point in the study of we see Satan's first initial attack on Job. So there's another one of these days that Job's sons and daughters got together. Maybe this is another one of their birthday celebrations. Maybe it's a different type of thing. But they were at the oldest brother's house. So most likely, if it is a birthday celebration, it was the oldest brother's birthday. A time of joy and celebration. And Job, as he often did, as we're told, was most likely doing his sacrifices, burnt offerings on their behalf. There came a messenger to him with terrible news. The oxen were plowing, the asses feeding beside them, and these people called the Sabeans. The Sabeans fell upon them and took them away. The Sabeans were sort of from the Arabic Peninsula and up toward what would be Edom, and so sort of that area south of what would become Israel. And they were known to be sort of a cruel people, and so they came and stole basically the oxen and the asses from Job and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and this one servant escaped to come tell Job what had happened. So this is the first bad thing that happens, but it's not done yet. While he was yet speaking. That phrase is used with each instance. The second, the third, and the fourth. One right after another. All right, so there's not a bit of time in between the news of each event. Also notice that this is 4 separate events, all right, happening in different places. With different parts of his household and substance and family. The oxen and the asses are already taken, and now the fire of God. Most likely this is referring to a lightning storm that's come up, that's burned up the pasture where he's at. It's killed all the sheep and all the servants and consumed them. And this one servant escapes to tell Job about it. So now 2 separate events on the same day that happen differently. Think about all the different ways that we can suffer. Sometimes we suffer at the hands of others. That's what happened to the oxen and the asses and the servants that were attending to them. Evil people came and stole their stuff and killed them. Verse 16, a natural event. The fire of God is fallen from heaven and consumed them. This terrible tragedy that comes up. Who's to be blamed for this one? It would have been easy for Job to say, those rotten Sabeans who have come up and done this. And there would be somebody that he might think, I could take vengeance on them. There's somebody at least to blame for it. Now there's not. Who's to blame for the fire of God coming down and burning up the sheep and killing the servants? So here's the third. While he was yet speaking. Another came, and the Chaldeans were very organized in their attack. They made 3 bands. And they fall upon the camels and steal the camels and kill the servants with the edge of the sword. And this one servant was left to go tell Job. So we have the Sabeans who seem to just sort of violently come and take him away. We have the fire of God. Now we have sort of like a military operation here in what the Chaldeans do. And they take the camels. So far, Job had lost animals and servants, and that would have been bad enough. All of his livelihood is gone. Job, being a righteous man, would have cared for his servants as well. These were not abused slaves. Job would have cared for his servants well and would have had an affection for them. And so all of that would have been bad enough. but now his family is affected. It already mentioned how his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And another natural event, a great wind comes, and when it says it smites the four corners of the house, that specifically is sort of a figure of speech to complete destruction of the house. It wasn't, half the house that fell, or it tore off the roof or something like that, but it demolished the house. You look at tornado damage, and how sometimes there are houses that have pieces of them taken off, or you could tell that something has slammed into the house, and then you see other houses that were in the direct path of this tornado, and they are leveled. That's the picture that we're given here of what happened to Job's sons and daughters. Is this great wind came up, and the house was leveled, and everyone in it dead, except for one. Isn't it amazing? Each time there's one person that survives. What would Job have thought about these? He has no idea about the conversation that God had with Satan. From Job's perspective, he has the same perspective that we would have. He doesn't get to see behind the scenes and know what's happening. All he sees is what's happened in his life. And the strange coincidence that all this happens on the same day. And there is one person who survives each time. And sort of the orderliness of the destruction of everything that he has and his own children. We can feel for Job. It's hard for us to completely relate to it. Bad things have happened to all of us. But I dare say that none of us have had the amount of things that happened at one time that Job did. I mean, he lost everything all at once without any knowledge of why these things are happening. Let's get to Job's reaction to these things. Job goes through the way that they would receive bad news and their reaction to it, their mourning. And so all these things are a sign of deep emotional pain, that he would tear his clothes, rent his mantle, he would shave his head, and fall to the ground. And in so doing, he also worshiped the Lord. Again, he doesn't have full knowledge of what's just happened. But his faith in God goes deeper than what Satan accused him of. Remember that Satan is the false accuser, right? He's the liar. And so he says Job would curse God to his face if you just took everything away. Well, he's wrong. Job's faith is much deeper than that. And he had this reasoning: I came out naked, and I will naked go back to God. And, the Lord has given me things, the Lord has taken it away. Again, he thinks that the Lord has done this. Well, we know that the Lord has allowed it. And in many cases in the Bible, when God allows something, he is said also to have done it. But to say that the Lord took these things away is not technically true. Satan did. And yet, even thinking that God just took everything from him, what does he say? Blessed be the name of the Lord. It's the same type of attitude that Abraham had. God told Abraham to sacrifice the thing that was most precious to him, his son Isaac. And he woke up early the next morning to go and do just that. And Job has the same attitude here. Even if the most important things are taken from me, I will still bless the name of the Lord. I will still worship him. And so we have this statement made about Job. In all this, Job sinned not. It was acceptable for him to have the wrong idea about who did this to him. It was okay that Job thought that God had taken these things from him because of the overriding attitude that he had around that. Still, blessed be the name of the Lord. He still worshiped the Lord. And so he did not charge God foolishly. Right? Didn't charge him foolishly. He does say that God did it, but he was very careful in his words and in his attitude about who God is, what God is, and his relationship to him. Yes and no. Satan accuses Job of having a shallow faith. That's basically what it's about. As long as he's doing physically well, he's going to believe in God. In that sense, God had protected Job because nothing bad had happened to Job that we know of. Things were going very well for him. But it is a false accusation as well because that's not what Job's faith was in. It wasn't in the hedge around him. It was actually in God, and we see that in the reaction to the suffering. So there's probably some truth in it, but Satan, as he so often does, is using a bit of truth to look at things from his perspective. So, yeah. Well, I don't know that anything happens here is a miracle. Satan's the one doing it. So God hasn't done any of these things. It's Satan that's doing it. Satan brought the fire. Satan brought the wind. Maybe he is. I don't know why we would say that he isn't. Satan tempts us in a number of ways, and there's a certain amount of authority that's been given to him to do that. Now, when we look at the temptations of Jesus, there's miraculous things that happen there that don't happen to us. He was immediately taken to the top of the temple, to a mountain, things like that. But these are just natural events, and Job never seems to think that these are miraculous events. These are things that happen. Tornadoes happen. Lightning causing fire happens. And so we can only really refer to something as a miracle if it's something that doesn't naturally happen. And we find, I think what we're being told here is we're taken behind the scenes, and why couldn't this still happen today? And one difference we do need to make in what is a miracle. A miracle is something that can't naturally happen. It is not the same thing as an intervention from God, or in this case, Satan. Obviously here, Satan intervened in nature to cause this natural event to happen. It's still a natural event. It would not be called a miracle. And so from God's perspective, we talk about the difference between miracles and how God works behind the scenes through providence, through the natural things that happen in life. And so there is a difference but between an intervention and a miracle. And so does Satan still intervene through these same means today? I find no reason to say no. Well, I think this is one of the great things we can learn from Job is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if God did these things or Satan did. Now, we are, given this behind the scenes look so that we might know that when these terrible things happen to us in life, why those things happen. It is Satan tempting us and not God abandoning us. So as long as, Job, God never fully answers Job's question. God never tells Job that it was Satan. Why? Didn't matter. Job's reaction was the only thing that mattered, that he continued to have faith in God. And through the process of the book, once Job starts talking, beginning in chapter 3, Job says some things that are pretty direct about what his thoughts are in his confusion about why God has done this. But in the end, it didn't. Those things didn't matter. Only that he retained his faith in God.